I mentioned in a previous video how I measure my life history by certain eras, not in the Taylor Swift kind of way where it's like in my blank era. I don't know, I don't really follow Taylor Swift all that much. What I can tell you is I do have eras of my life, but not in that way. It's more kind of like how prehistory is measured. For those of you who don't remember elementary school science class or have never been to a museum like the Museum of Science in Boston or haven't seen Jurassic Park, they use different kinds of eras to classify when certain creatures existed. Like the Jurassic era, for example, is where the name Jurassic Park comes from, even though, fun fact, most of the dinosaurs featured in that aren't from the Jurassic era. There's Mesozoic, something other. In human history, there's also such as the Paleolithic era, the Neolithic era, the Bronze Age, Silver Age, Golden Age, something period. You get the idea. Now, the way I measure it is with my photos and with my photos library, my photos app, and my Apple Music library. I have everything meticulously sorted out. So the eras for my music library up until the end of 2019, or as I call it, Henry Osier 8, which we'll get into more about that later. We have time immemorial, which is basically from birth up until elementary school through the end of kindergarten. And then that other video I explained how I have the summer before the first school year up until the end of the last school year is the overall era. So elementary school era, I have summer 2003, first grade, summer 2004, second grade, summer 2005, third grade, summer 2006, fourth grade, summer 2007, fifth grade. That's the elementary school era. So, for example, if I have a photo from fourth grade when I went to a John Ratzenberger book signing and got his autograph and a picture with him. I have that lone one sitting in there in the fourth grade folder because my personal photos mostly only go back to the summer of 2009 because that's when I got my first personal camera and a personal way to store files and such. Anyway, getting back on topic. So, for example, I saw Spider Man 3 in fourth grade because I saw it opening weekend in 2007. So, I would place the People Get Up and Drive Your Funky Soul song or whatever song Bully Maguire danced to in that Spider Man 3 sequence. You know the one. I would place that in the elementary school era playlist, which doesn't have all that much in that much comparatively speaking, because I can't remember as much. And then within that era, I would put in the fourth grade playlist because of the fourth grade period, that being one of the ways it's broken up. This way, there are smaller portions of time used for it. No, you know what? I just realized I actually don't have specific playlists for elementary school years because there's so few in each of them. Actually, I don't think I would even be able to come up with a first grade playlist because I can clearly remember seeing Revenge of the Sith opening weekend when I was in second grade, so that's why I put the Revenge of the Sith soundtrack in the elementary school era playlist. And then I can go from there up until the end of fifth grade. And then summer of 2008, that's the first one, the middle school era. And then that's followed by sixth grade. Actually, now that I think about it, I'm pretty sure I have a few. Uh, I don't remember all the music I have in each one. I actually forgot it. If I only have the playlists going back to seventh grade, I should really go in and do that. But anyway, that's how I break it up for all the photo and video albums so that I can more concisely go into it and not have a big omnibus of all that. Or I might merge them into one big one if all the other ones are too small. So yeah, most of my personal photos and videos library goes back to summer of 2009 when I got my Nintendo DSi and basically had my own personal camera before smartphone cameras were a thing. So I was pretty avant-garde in that front. Now maybe someone else my age would have also had a dedicated camera. I'm talking like one of those cheaper digital ones that I hear are making a comeback and not smartphone cameras. But yeah, I'd say I was avant-garde in that I had a personal electronic device that did other things that had a camera. True, it wasn't that good, but it was usable, and I had fun playing around with it. So it gave me more than just video games. So yeah, the middle school era was pretty much all of that, and then high school I have it broken up by summer 2011, ninth grade, summer 2012, 10th grade, etc. And then college, that's where I broke it up into smaller ones that honestly, yeah, I broke them up this way because of the way that classes worked compared to high school. So back in high school, well, there'd be maybe a class or two early on that was only half the school year, and then the second half, meaning late January through the end of June. By then, it was all By then, it was all done. Where for the most part, you had the same classes from September through June. So, for example, you'd have English class all throughout the school year. You'd have video production class all throughout the school year. You'd have, I think you get the idea. But then there were half the school year classes. So, for example, freshman year, here, one of the periods I had was for the first half of the school year, meaning before midterms. I had the TV broadcasting class where we actually did the TV studio setup, which in the case of the time when it came time for midterms was the final. And then instead of taking this other class I think I'd initially signed up for, I actually switched it to a study hall so that I could have more time to get homework done so that I could have more time for video games. So yeah, it wasn't just that, it was also the computer class and then the wellness class, which was a hybrid of health and gym, meaning some of the days on the rotation you'd have health class, other days you'd have gym class. But yeah, it would be half the school year computers, half the school year wellness. But overall, because there was, as the majority of classes ran throughout the entire school year, that's why I classified it as one big period rather than breaking it into smaller ones. Whereas when I got to college, it was 15 weeks or so of the semester. You'd have the same classes, assuming you didn't have to withdraw from any by the halfway point, because that was a thing in college. You could withdraw from a class and get an incomplete or something like that, or go for a pass fail option or something like that. But yeah, because as there was a midterm at the middle of the semester, because it was done by semesters instead of the overarching school year, that's why I broke college up into smaller segments. So I had summer 2015 as the start, and then in freshman year, making instead of a period of freshman year or first year as they called it by then to be gender neutral, I broke that up into three smaller periods. So after summer 2015, it was fall semester 2015, and then winter break 2015-16, because that went from within a week before Christmas until a full week after Martin Luther King Day, or rather 6 days after that for all intents and purposes. Senior year, it started, spring semester 2019 started the day after Martin Luther King Day. Hey, I didn't make these rules. Well, the reason, well, for all intents and purposes, the first 3 years it was the a full week after Martin Luther King Day because that's when classes started. But I considered the Sunday before that the start for all intents and purposes for me personally because that's when I'd pick up my books from the bookstore. I think you get the idea. So anyway, college it would go summer 20x, fall semester 20x, winter break 20x to y, then spring semester 20x, repeat. And then all of that overarchingly was considered the college era. So that means I have an overarching playlist for the college era and then shorter playlists and then also the photos and videos albums of each period that I just went over. Now the winter break ones were kind of small and I kind of considered merging it back into just one big school year album or playlist after at some points, but it is what it is, and because of the different classes and because of how the classes worked, that's why I decided to go with the summer vacation semester, winter break semester setup. Yeah, after I graduated college, I declared it the post-college epilogue, which was basically just a collection of the day after my last final up until the Saturday before New Year's in 2019, which brings me into the year structure. I also have a different way that I organize years. I don't just go by 20x or 2000x for that. Now, you see, when I first got control of the basement for my TV and video games and movies as my entertainment place, my personal playroom for that, if you will, I named it Henrios, kind of like Westeros. And I came up with this whole culture of it, and I basically made it a country in my own basement. Yeah, I think, as I mentioned before, right now it's Henry's Mojo Dojo Officina office. Henry's Mojo Dojo Officina office. So where I'm sitting right now used to be where I would watch my stuff and play my video games. Now that's all up in Henry's Mojo Dojo dormitorio bedroom because of an encounter with a mouse that I had last year that scared me from it. But I decided, since that, objectively speaking, that was pretty infrequent in the grand scheme of things. Like, it only usually happens on really cold days, and probably didn't help that I had food crumbs that I should have been vacuuming. That's a story for another day. But anyway, the Henrios calendar, I measure her years from the first Sunday after the last Saturday of December through the last Saturday of the following December. So right now it is Henrios year 14. The reason it's the 14th year is because I used my Saturday movie as a reference point. So the Saturday movie began in 2012. So 2012 is Henrios year 1 up until December 29th, with December 30th, 2012 onward being Henrios year 2, and so on. I think you can guess the pattern from here. So yeah, that's another type of playlist I have for different ones for the before years, meaning 2011 before. I call them Henry Osier -1 or HY for short. And that's what I have it listed as in the playlists for the sake of brevity and so that I can have uh, I can vocally have it play. I'm trying not to say the actual thing out loud in case you have smart devices that will react or disrupt you if you pick it up, and my devices might do that, might interrupt this very video recording. But anyway, the Henry Osiers were how I measured things after the post college epilogue. So, Henry Osier, actually, that's another reason I wanted to. It does get a little confusing thing with the music because before, like, or so there's some cutoff and overlap between them. So the school years, obviously, there's going to be some overlap between one Henry O's year and another because of one calendar year into another, and then the winter break ones. That's like the tail end of one year and the early weeks of the other. But yeah, for the sake of knowing where everything is, and because of the reduced stability, if you will, or I guess because back when I came up with this, I knew there might be some degree of job hopping compared to that. So you never know how long a job could last. I've actually been at the instant gratification job, as I've called it, for 5 years now, ever since I finished up at the movie theater job. So I could technically create periods of those. The problem is or I could make those eras. I don't know. I just know for a fact that because of the changing nature, comparatively speaking, like with school, assuming you don't repeat, you don't have to repeat a year or go to summer school or anything like that. It would still be summer 20X, but assuming you didn't have to repeat a grade, that's it was going to be what it was going to be no matter what. Whereas, you never really know what happens after college. I mean, and I graduated college in 2019, and look what happened less than a year. It happened 10 months later, the pandemic. That's what happened. Anyway, what was I saying? Oh, yeah, after the post college epilogue, because I couldn't really think of anything else to call it, I just decided to go with organizing by Henry Ostiers. That way, there's some kind of reset, or I don't bloat one album or folder or playlist to an insane level, unless it just happens to be that there's a lot of photos and videos I took or saved from the internet that I wanted to preserve, or a lot of new music that I wanted to commemorate. So if there's a lot of movies that I watched and enjoyed, and there's a playlist of songs that were featured in it, or a lot of the soundtrack I wanted to keep, then that is going to be a much more full year compared to when there aren't as many. Like right now, I do have a new movie every Saturday, but not all of them are worthy of having any kind of soundtrack preservation, if you will. Some do, most don't. So, for example, January 11th, Henry Osier 14 playlist, I have the Wicked soundtrack because that's when I watched it and I enjoyed it. Compare that to Henry Osier 13 when I went to see Moana 2 at the theater and was vi- and I was and I was let down like I should have expected from a movie that was cobbled together from the remains of a scrapped Disney Plus show. I didn't save any of those songs into that playlist for Henry Osier 13, and I have no intention of doing that. I've listened back to it a couple times, but I decided I don't want to keep it, partially because some are redundant, some don't really fit into the overall narrative of the story. It feels disjointed because they were probably from the remains of the show. And then there's the pure principle behind it. Same thing with the Joker 2 soundtrack, but that was much more egregious. But yeah, I think you get the idea. So yeah, I think I'm gonna leave it here for the video because overall, I think it's a great way to historicize your life or have a more creative names for it than just date, month, year. Again, for me, it's the time immemorial elementary school era, middle school era, high school era, college era, post college epilogue, and then just Henry Osier from there. And then within the elementary, middle school, high school, and college eras are the different periods. Maybe I'll start breaking them down into smaller periods if I can. Smaller ones. I can't use anything that I can't think of anything overarching, if you will. So comment what you think of all this. Give this video a like. Subscribe for daily uploads, and I will see you soon.